Welcome back to the Paranormal Girl podcast. I am your host, Kristen. I am back after an unexpected week off. Life went off the rails a little bit, as it can do at times. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. But I think the dust has settled for now, and I am so happy to be recording once again and bringing you guys even more entertaining education. I have a great guest conversation prepared for you today. Really enjoyed getting to speak with this fellow skeptical believer and fellow member of the Society for Arcane Studies. This will be part 1 of 2, because, when the conversation's fun and entertaining, you keep going. I don't know what to say about that. Speaking of fun and entertaining, mark your calendars, set your clocks. The second episode of the brand new call-in talk podcast program, Beer, Booze, and Boogeymen, goes live once again Saturday, March 2nd, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Our topic is strange lights. Strange lights. Could be a UFO in the sky, ghost lights in the woods, flickering lights in your mom's basement. Whatever your experience, we want to hear from you. Submit a written account or voice message at ghost.beer. Ghost.beer. Super simple. Or you can just call in during the stream. I mean, whatever you want to do. Technical issues, be damned. But Damien, Gil, and I had such a great time hearing your stories. You guys just really made that show a special night for us, so let's do it again. March 2nd, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. See you there. So, last week, something strange happened on old YouTube. I woke up one morning and saw a few new faces pop up in my sub list. We have surpassed my goal for the month, and I don't know how. It's a mystery. So, if anyone out there shared the show with friends, talked about it on your socials, and gave me some love, thank you. Thank you so much. A lovely new subscriber, S. Wilson463, wanted to hear about the paranormal happenings on the Squatch Fest journey. Like I said, I would tell this story if someone asked. But my brother-in-law made an appearance. He was there the entire trip. That weekend being the anniversary weekend of his passing and following a year of activity from him, it doesn't really surprise me. But, it was cool. It was nice. Now, for anyone who does not want to hear about afterlife communications and my experiences at Squatch Fest, and just wants to get to the Bigfoot stuff, I totally understand. Skip ahead about 6 or 7 minutes. That should put you right at the intro. For everyone else, I get how some of you might think these are nothing more than coincidence. But like I said, this family has heard from him more than enough over the past year. We kind of know what to keep an eye out for now. So, here we go. So we left town very early in the morning. I plugged in my Waze. I love Waze. I always depend on it whenever I'm going anywhere new. And I had looked at the trip the night before, and I knew which road we were going to be taking south. However, as we got on the road, it redirected us. At the time, I was assuming, okay, it's doing that to save us time or something. There's a crash or construction or whatever. So we went on this redirected route. Followed it for about a half hour when suddenly, up ahead, we could see on the screen that it was going to make us U-turn and send us back the way we had just come and take the original road. The very small town we were in was the town my sister married my brother-in-law. It is out in the middle of nowhere. The intersection, it had us turning around was where you hang a right to head up to the bed and breakfast in front of which they were married. Coincidence and technical malfunction? Well, perhaps. So, we're back on our original route, back on the road. Part of the journey there, we went along the route along the Columbia Gorge. I have never been on this road before. About an hour or so away from our first destination, we were approaching one of those big green interstate signs with like upcoming towns and, just stuff on them. And I was paying particular attention because I wanted to see if it showed how much further our first stop was going to be. Get up to the sign. It's a list of 3 places, starting with John Day Dam. I think it was John something, followed by Biggs Junction, followed by another place. My brother-in-law's name was John, and his nickname was Big, after the character in the Sex and the City, and also because he was big. Another coincidence? Sure. There are a lot of places with John or Biggs in the name, even some together on the same sign. Sure. Fast forward to the following day. We were just leaving day 1 of Squatch Fest. It was a little wet, murky out. It was getting dark. The lights in my sister's vehicle are automatic unless they are turned off. They were turned off. Now, this stuck out to me because this is a specific sign that I believe I have received from John in my own vehicle. The strange thing about the lights in my car, I always leave them on automatic. I have never turned them to the off position. And I will put a pic up here for my YouTube audience to show you why this is so strange. As you can see, it is a big dial that you have to manually turn all the way to the left in order to shut off the lights. Again, I have never, since the day of owning my car, turned the damn lights off. They automatically sense dark versus light. Why would I bother? Well, since John's passing, starting the very evening that he passed, I have gotten into my personal car 3 times to find the lights turned off, turned all the way to the left. So this happening in my sister's car really grabbed my attention. One more thing that I will share, and it's the big one. It was the second and final day of the conference. My sister and I were standing in line for hot dogs out near the food trucks. This area butted right up against the beer tent where they were playing live music inside. Suddenly, they start playing Sweet Caroline by Neil Diamond. The energy shifted. My sister and I were both just smiling after the previous signs. People were singing, doing the bump, 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 good times never look so good. So were we. So were we. And she's crying. And we're just going, oh, he's here. He's here. And I know that. I knew that. He was. It's a feeling. Hard to explain. John was known for his eclectic taste in music and just turning the volume all the way up, just rocking out. And there is a whole story behind it, but Sweet Caroline was their song. It was really special to them. And he was a very stoic, very stern man. But anytime it came on, he stopped what he was doing to go dance with my sister. And that's basically the story. There were some other things, just smaller things too. But, those were the signs that had a big impact on me. And they are just additions to a year's worth of activity from him. His story is ongoing still. All right. Let's do a quick word from today's sponsor before I bring on our guest. 2024 is here in full swing, and that means it's time for a New Year's resolution check-in with our friends at Manscaped. Newsflash! It is never too late to level up your grooming game and keep your bush tamed, fellas. Manscaped's new Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra is every man's cheat code to look good, feel good, and turn the page on confidence this year. Whether you're going for a trim or that clean-shaven look, this trimmer has you covered. Trusted by over 10 million men worldwide, now is your time to get a grip on your grooming with my exclusive offer. Go to manscaped.com and use code PNG for 20% off plus free shipping. Valentine's Day has passed. The Super Bowl. President's Day. So much has happened, and we're well into February now. How those resolutions holding up, my dudes? We can't slip up yet. It is still early enough to make this year the year we make the change we've been needing to. Plus, it is never too late to change. Old grooming habits die easy when your why is big enough. And when you have the proper tools to get you there, Manscaped's Performance Package 5.0 has those tools. The trusted lawnmower, Manscaped's ear and nose hair trimmer, and essential aftercare products like the Crop Soother Ball Aftershave Lotion and Crop Preserver Anti-Chafing Ball Deodorant. They also throw in 2 free gifts, the Shed 2.0 toiletry bag and a pair of the Boxers 2.0, because they know well and good you might still be rocking your boxers from high school. So get 20% off and free shipping with the code PNG at manscaped.com. Embrace a new you. Embrace a new pair of boxers. And definitely embrace a new trimmer, courtesy of Manscaped. Jim Brown is resident squatcher and journal contributor over at the Society for Arcane Studies. He was a member of Sasquatch Investigations of the Rockies, based out of Colorado, and has been studying, learning about, and investigating Sasquatch for many years. Perhaps most importantly, though, Jim is an open-minded skeptic who is enthusiastic about this elusive critter. He wrote a piece titled "Let's Talk About Bigfoot" for the Society for Arcane Studies online journal, in which he asks his readers to keep an open mind as he details signs and evidence of its existence and historical precedence. He also takes his readers through an examination of the Patterson Gimlin capture and makes his case as to why it's not just a guy in a monkey suit. Please enjoy my conversation with Jim Brown.
In my first life, I studied geology. And in my third life, I was a registered nurse. And in my third and fourth life, and retired life now, I've worked for office services, just doing basically everything there is to do around an office: copy, printing, production, all that kind of stuff. Partly because I have a big mouth and I tend to not be able to stay with a career for very long. So I ended up doing that where I don't make people quite so angry.
Jack of all trades,
I've done a lot.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people think they gotta pick just one thing, and that's the one thing that you are for the rest of your life, and that's just not so.
That doesn't work anymore anyway. I guess another big factor is, in growing up, we moved constantly.
Mm-hmm.
I figured one time, and maybe not correctly, but I think it was like 11 different cities and 16 different houses by the time I graduated high school.
Wow.
And so moving that much, it gets you out of a lot of term papers. But it also just gives you a real perspective on people all over the world, all over the country. And I've seen a lot of things, and enjoyed a lot of different places.
Yeah.
So I can relate. When somebody talks about North Carolina or South Carolina, I've been there and lived there. I can relate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that does give me a little extra perspective.
Well, maybe that's why we've gotten along so well so far. We've got a email chain going back quite a ways. We have a kind of a similar background there. I've been all over the
Cool.
place too.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. You got to have that world view. Open your
You do.
mind.
You're in California now, is that right?
No longer in California, now
Oh,
Pacific Northwest, the
oh, okay.
beautiful Pacific
Oh, yes.
Northwest. Yes. Well, one thing you did not mention in that list is your involvement in another aspect, uh, Bigfoot,
Oh,
cryptic
oh,
aspect. Yes.
oh my goodness. the So my dad was always kind of interested in weirdness.
Mhm.
From Gene Dixon, the famous psychic, to oh golly, in North Carolina there was something that came like the Woofing Nanny, some kind of a little creature. I found one reference to it was in later years. And he was always interested in these things. But finally, wasn't I came across an article in the paper, and it referenced a woman who I won't give her name, but I knew of her by reputation,
Mhm.
and where she had come face to face with a Bigfoot, like 10 feet away, and she had worked with bear rehabilitation, so she knew it wasn't a bear. And they come face to face, and there's a baby peeking out from behind her. And I said, I know this woman. And a lot of my wife's friends knew her too. So that just got me interested in the subject again. It was, like I said, I won't even go into the paper where it was, but it just caught my interest. So then I found the BFRO website trying to find it, and I did find it eventually. But that was a long rabbit hole. And then when I found out that there was going to be some people presenting at Frozen Dead Guy Days, which is a whole other backstory I can go into if you want to, up in a town near here called Netherland.
Mhm.
And that's where I met Michael, who'd started Sasquatch Investigation of the Rockies, and a couple other people there who became friends.
Mhm.
And so that's what really got me into it. Michael invited me out to go with him. And he didn't invite just any or everybody, but I must have said the right things or something. And he invited me out on a trip. And that's where I saw and heard some of my first interesting things.
Ooh. Well,
And then I okay,
oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so
go, no,
sorry.
go
I'm
ahead.
very excited by
No, go
you.
ahead.
So
Go
when
ahead.
you joined the SIR, so you were an actual team member with them,
Yeah.
and you got to go out on expeditions and did you spend a lot of time out in the woods, like looking for evidence and?
Not near as much. Michael was able in those days, at least, to go out for weeks at a time,
Oh, okay.
and I could squeeze out, usually in those days, a long weekend at the best.
Mhm.
I was still working, but so I would go out with him, whenever he had a trip going out. We went on quite a few, um, and there was always something interesting happening. And then on the other hand, I seemed to miss a lot of them. Like one of the we'd gone out and about. You're just kind of in the car looking around, and I got back to camp, and I was car sick as all hell. So I stayed in camp while everybody went out to like the feeding post, which is a common thing. And
Mhm.
they saw, I think, a group of five. And of course, I missed it because I was car sick back at camp.
Oh, no.
And that sort of seems to be the kind of thing that's happened a lot. So yeah, I've regretted that one quite a bit.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, what an experience that would be. Well, what kinds of evidence, did you get to see while you were with them?
Well, probably the most interesting one was it was in November, up in the mountains. So it was getting pretty cold, and waking up in probably in 3, 4 in the morning, something like that, hearing wood knocks coming from deep in the woods, and it just sounded almost like a pistol shot. But it couldn't have been. There was no place back there, and it was the middle of the night. But it was just this amazing crack, crack, And then Michael was awake and he said, "Did you hear that?" And I go, "Yeah, I did." And that was really, it actually woke me up from a dream. In the dream, there was a judge hitting the gavel. And then I woke up and then I heard the cracks coming from deep in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first and most interesting one. Then seeing some eye shine and having somebody show me. I just thought it was just my eyes playing tricks until they were saying, "Did you see that?" Just as my eye was playing a trick on me. And said, "Oh yeah, okay, that's what that is." So seeing eye shine, and then I've seen a few footprints. On one of those trips, I got a picture of we measured it at, what was it? I think it was it 19 inches? Something like that. It was really big. It was
Wow.
right outside the tent. And it was on hard pack. This, mountain has this, where you have the hard pack with the pine needles layer over it. But
Mm-hmm.
there was enough to leave an impression in the ground. And we
Wow.
could see a couple of those. And I'm thinking, this thing is hanging around outside my tent.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where was that located? I'm
That
asking
was,
for a specific reason. Go ahead.
yeah, it was in the Front Range, kind of in the area called the Rampart Range,
Okay.
which may show up later too in the conversation. Um, but there have been. I mean, I don't think I'm giving away any secrets there. People have seen a lot of, and sometimes we are a little circumspect because people have sites they go to, and they've kind of cultivated a relationship with the group there or something like that.
Sure, sure.
Um, so but I don't think I really need to be terribly circumspect about that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
no, and it's not my intention to give away anybody's, their
yeah,
sites or anything, but
yeah.
I was just trying to establish that this bare footprint, 19-inch bare footprint, was found outside your tent, out in the middle of the woods, out in the middle of just,
Well, it was. There's a road going past there, and we're
okay.
camped just maybe 100 feet off the road.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So it wasn't in the middle of nowhere per
Mhm.
se. And there's a lot of people who ride mountain bikes and stuff like that in that
Oh,
area.
okay.
But this was outside the tent, um, and I have to look back at the picture because I have a big stick I carry. It's a piece of a railing off a staircase,
Mhm.
and I just call it my whacking stick. And I have a tape measure taped onto it, so I can just lay it down and get a sense.
Okay. Okay.
But I think it was 19 inches.
Well, you call yourself an open-minded skeptic about Sasquatch. Like, did you
Mm.
consider at the time, like, did you guys talk about, well, what are the chances of somebody, a mountain biker that was up here, like, taking the time to come and plant this footprint right outside our tent?
I think about that, and I just have to say, as often as not, it's like it would have to be, come on, get real. For starters, we would hear somebody, walking around outside the tent because there's usually five of us sleeping in the tent,
Mhm.
and they're all sleeping at the same time, especially with my snoring. But the and it was no, when I say a bear print, it was a barefoot print,
Mhm. Mhm.
not a bear print, but a barefoot
Right,
print.
right, right.
And if you had a mountain biker with a 19-inch footprint, 19-inch foot, they probably would have a hard time, pushing the pedals or fixing their toes into toe clips.
Be a little awkward bike ride up there. Um, well, you wanted to speak to something before we started recording, and I wanted to give you the stage for that. It's about expertise in this
Mhm.
field of Sasquatch. Would you consider yourself an expert? Like, what's the distinguishing
Yeah.
line here?
Well, so there's an old joke. It's not very funny, but it's like, what's the definition of an expert?
Mhm.
An X is a big nothing, and a spurt is a little drip under pressure. So by that definition, I'm an expert. you know, with the people that you have on, Lyle Blackburn and these other folks, as I said before, I am not worthy to fasten the strap on their GoPro, if they use a GoPro. Um, take my hat off to all of these guys who've been able to go out there and fully spend time and research. Frankly, a lot of times I didn't have gas money to go out and,
Mm-hmm.
and do that. Which, there's Michael who started SIR, so SIR, who taught me so much. And through him, I met another friend who I don't feel comfortable giving his name, but he's a Vietnam vet and probably the toughest person I have ever met, and the kindest. Just the kindest man. And some of his experiences, I've learned so much from him. Patrick, who's going to be starting up his own little Bigfoot thing here before, actually he posted his first one today. While I'm sitting there in camp having my third cup of coffee, he comes back from walking. So he's been walking for a couple of hours by this time, and found footprints and tree breaks and interesting things. There's so many people, who I tip my hat to. And I'm basically along for the ride a lot of the time. I may organize a camping trip, but there's so many others who know so much more than I do. If I have an expertise, I think it's in being able to write or talk about things and make them relatable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I have to offer.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, I'm taken from everybody.
Well, yeah, it's there are a lot of people who would say there are no experts, period, in a field like
That's
this or paranormal, and
mhm,
that's that there's something to that. I do agree, but
mhm,
yeah, there are these folks who have totally committed the lives and time and motivation to like one subject, and they are like the bulk of the
they
information
are,
about
yeah,
that
yeah.
subject. So I do see what you're saying, but on the other hand, like, you have a very unique, slant to this as well, a very unique, perspective to this as well, because like I, mentioned in your bio, you have this background in science, logic-based field, you know a lot about
Mhm,
mythology, psychology, you were a registered nurse, like, this very what you would consider very
mhm,
logical place to come from, like a
mhm,
Dr. Jeff Meldrum, like a Dr. Grover Krantz. You're coming from a very
mhm,
logical place, and now you're here studying Sasquatch. You do have a lot of knowledge. You've accrued a lot of knowledge over the years.
mhm.
You have been out in the field. You've done the work. So I don't know. I just really respect that, and
I appreciate that.
especially coming from the background you do and landing here and thinking there is something to it, and also calling yourself an open-minded skeptic.
Mhm.
I respect that, absolutely. I think that I am too. But as an open-minded skeptic coming from this background, so you've never seen one, you've never seen a Bigfoot.
That's correct.
Some of the evidence, like, you have questioned it yourself. Like, what do you think is so what compels you to keep going with this? What is so compelling about it that you think, yeah, maybe?
Um, Part of it is that I have so many friends and people who I trust so explicitly, who have seen them.
Mm,
Um, and I have no reason to doubt their line. When Michael talks about it being pouring rain outside, and he could hear them stomping around outside the tent, trying to probably scare him away. And he sees a pair of fingers come under the side of the tent and
ooh,
start messing with the zipper fob. He said they were like big black sausages, gray with black fingernails.
oh,
When you hear a story like that, like, why would you lie about that? And it takes a lot of imagination. Not that I'm not saying he doesn't have any imagination, but that's spooky stuff. Um, or other people who've seen them, or people I know and trust, or just the thousands and thousands of reports. If you go through the BFRO website in particular,
mhm,
um, they're just I don't. Can we cuss on this show?
Go for it.
They're just batshit crazy, you know. The So that's part of it.
Hmm.
The people I trust have seen them, and so then what I keep hearing is you see them, you think you're prepared for it, and you will just be gobsmacked the first time you do, probably terrified, but it's amazing. That's what I keep hearing. It's just amazing to see this.
Hmm.
And I want to see this, you know?
What
Yeah.
would you do if you saw one? What would you do?
Well, probably the same thing I would do if I saw a ghost or a UFO, an actual fact. I would probably start screaming and never stop. Um, but I have tried to, go over this in my mind, the same way as a nurse when you would rehearse, you rehearse what you do in an emergency situation.
Hmm.
I've tried to picture myself there, and I would hope I would just be able to stand calm or even just sit down
Hmm.
and be not threatening and say, "Hey, um, let's talk." you know, I would hope, like I say, I would probably be whimpering on the ground, but that's what I would like to do. My goal used to always be to get a picture,
Hmm.
and I would still certainly like to have a picture, which I could bring back to my not my skeptical friends, but my cynical friends, and say, "Here, up yours." Um, but I think I just want to experience it,
Yeah.
experience being in the presence of something so other and so powerful. I guess that makes sense. I hope it does. It does to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, well, you mentioned something in there, something about speaking to it. What after a lifetime, like, you were curious as a child up until the point you made the
Mhm.
jump into actually pursuing the information. You've been doing it basically for a lifetime. What do you after all that, what do you think Bigfoot is? Like, what are its
Mhm.
features? What are the features about it? What camp do you fall in?
Well, I used to, I'll have to say, I'm changing a little bit here.
Mhm.
What we, people call the woo woo camp.
Yep.
The, excuse me, the mystical and the portals and the stuff like this. There's some serious people who are starting to talk about portals and things like this. So I may have to change my thinking on that. Um, my wife thinks that Bigfoot, Sasquatches are pets of extraterrestrials. And when they open the portal, they're letting them out to go get some exercise,
Oh.
go potty, and then they come back in through the portal. And that's how we keep not seeing them.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think they're essentially a flesh and blood creature.
Mhm.
I think they are completely sentient, self-aware. Excuse me, they're not animals. They're not like gorilla or chimpanzees who are, of course, sentient. Um, but I think they are a hominid, some variation on the humans. I read years ago where somebody using or one of these forensic anthropologists, I think it was, took pictures from the Patterson Gimlin film
Mhm.
and removed the facial hair, and said that the face looked very, very Native American.
Hmm.
um, so I'm not saying anything about who or what, but who knows where these lineages, may have branched, may have split off. I really, that's out of my realm, but that's just, something I heard that I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
But they obviously, they seem to have a sense of tactical thinking. Oftentimes, I think when they appear, it's like, I'm going to show myself, or, but you can't get to me from here. Or sometimes I think they have made a mistake and been caught out, because I'll say they're only human, right? But I hear stories of like finding a kill, that has been torn to shreds. I mean, like ripped apart, but finding a little feather stuck in there, or or what appears to be a nest. I can't say yes, it is a nest, but it appears to be some sort of a bed or a nest that might have feathers or something stuck around it. Something that to me says they have a sense of the numinous,
Hmm.
as Jung would call it, the mystical,
Yeah.
the holy dread, if you or something like that. Um, the So that's when I began to think these are sentient creatures.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and the fact that sometimes the like tree breaks sometimes seem to have a meaning, like go this way, and you go and you find another one, and then you find another one as if it's creating a path. So I think there's some kind of sentient creature. Now, like I say, when you have people like, who are doing the Skinwalker Ranch investigations and serious scientists and people like Jacques Vallée, who's known for his UFO stuff, but when people like him start talking about portals and dimensions, well, I can't rule it out. You know? So it's a big pill to swallow, but I'm slowly choking it down.
Well, yeah, and you brought in a couple of things I'm going to ask you about because I want to get into like signs and evidence of
Mhm,
Bigfoot. But
mhm,
you make a good point in saying that, like as we are going through our thoughts and theories and opinions on, oh, what is Bigfoot? Is it like this more paranormal kind of mystical creature? Is it like flesh and blood? Like I feel like we can kind of obviously say that it is a physical creature
mhm,
at its core. It is physical because it leaves behind evidence. It leaves it's one of the only, like, supernatural, quote, unquote, things that I can think of that consistently leaves behind physical evidence that
mhm.
it
Good
was
point.
there. And you talk, quite a bit about a lot of this evidence in the piece that you wrote for I have to assume I didn't ask before we started recording, but this was for on behalf of, Society for Arcane Studies, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, okay.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
my fellow member.
yeah. Jason, yes,
Yeah.
very, very nice man.
Yes, he is. He's
uh,
lovely.
he's so smart.
Well,
Um,
Jason, the prez, he calls you their resident squatcher. How,
okay,
how,
sure, why not?
hey, you know what? Kudos. How did this, like, come to be? How did you become a member of SAS? Like, what's your scope of work, looked like with them?
So I went to see Ron Moorhead, who is famous for his Sierra recordings,
Mhm.
and and that's fascinating stuff. If you dig into that a little bit, that almost made me never go into the woods again.
Oh.
You know, um, but he was speaking out here in Golden, and I saw Jason there, and I knew him
Mhm.
because his wife sings with my wife's singing group.
Oh.
Um, and now they live in Estonia now,
Mhm.
but at the time when they lived here, his wife sang in my wife's singing group called Planina, Songs of Eastern Europe, and so we got to talking about stuff, and we both realized that we both had a fascination with the weird. So that's how I got hooked up with him, and so he helped me one time. I did a little presentation at a bookstore
Mhm.
that one of the members also owned. And so we just kind of became friends and did more from there. He
Mhm.
asked me to write a piece for this. He asked me if I would be happy if I'd like to be interviewed on his podcast.
Okay, okay. So in that article, let's talk about Bigfoot. Like I said, you do go into quite a bit of that evidence. You kind of lay it out for the readers. It's very
Mhm.
easy to understand. It's just a pleasure to read. But you also zero in on some of the information surrounding the Patterson Gimlin film, and
Mhm.
I just really enjoyed it. I think that you made a really good argument as to why it's not a hoax. I like the stance that you
Hmm.
took and the information that you provided. Can you talk about that a little bit? Tell us why it's not a guy in a monkey suit.
Okay. So let me think where I want to start with this. Um, so I got to see Bob Gimlin at a conference one time, and I learned a lot of things that I hadn't realized before. And that's, one that they didn't just go out there and happen to see this picture. They had been out for a month at that point, covering about 30 miles a day on horseback. And so they'd been out for a while, and they decided to go in a little deeper into the woods there. And that's when they stumbled across this picture, or not this picture, but
Yeah.
this Bigfoot.
Hmm.
And of course, no white man, at least in recent history, had seen one. So they had seen footprints and stuff, and there's some prospectors and all who have stories about it. But you understand, they didn't know what they were looking for. They didn't know what it was going to look like when they saw it.
Right.
And they come around this huge root ball, and there it is. It's obviously startled, and their horses are startled. And the horses probably wouldn't be startled if it was just one of them running around in a monkey suit. So Bob got off his horse, and he had a rifle at the ready because they didn't know what was going to happen. And Roger was half thrown, half got off his horse, and he gets off and he's struggling to get the camera out of the camera bag, and he's running, and trying to get a picture, and he falls in the creek, and he finally gets stabilized enough to get a little bit of more steady footage. So, there's just, so when you start saying a guy in a monkey suit, okay, realizing that they didn't know how would they have made a monkey suit when they didn't know what it was going to look like?
Hmm.
How would they have made a Bigfoot suit if he didn't know what it was going to look like? And it is consistent with every decent piece of footage we ever see from them.
Hmm.
So how would they know that? Now, yes, there is this thing that they had, or that Patterson had a suit made sometime in the past. And there's a lot around this, and I'm not sure exactly that there was a horsehair one, and that there was another kind. I don't quite know.
Hmm.
But so they're going around, for days and days at a time, they're lugging this monkey suit with them. And that just doesn't make sense. People will believe it. You can show them a mountain of evidence saying it's true. But one person has to say, oh, they had a monkey suit. And the conclusion, oh, well, see there, I told you it was a hoax. They're happily believe, one piece of evidence that it's a hoax. But then there's just the whole thing of, and as I said before, you're riding down the street and you see a guy sitting in front of a new car wash, twirling a sign, dressed in a gorilla suit, and you don't think, oh my God, there's a gorilla escaped from the zoo, because it doesn't look like a gorilla.
Right. Right.
Or you see a gorilla in a zoo and you don't think, oh, those poor people, because it doesn't look like a person.
Hmm.
The proportions are wrong. The long arms, and yeah, you could make an extension on your arms and have them flop around or something, but the proportions are wrong. The walk is wrong. If you look at this and other videos, you'll see how their knee doesn't extend. The knee is always a little bent.
Yeah.
And then it places one foot in front of the other. What you see that when you see long lines of footprints. It's called a compliant gait.
Hmm.
Plus the footprints themselves are different. And this is where Dr. Meldrum really comes in. And boy, I take my hat off to him for being a serious academic willing to delve into this. But from looking at the footprints, he kind of reverse engineers the lower part of the leg and I think up to the hip. But you'll see these, and they push off with the entire front of the foot. We push off from the ball of our foot at the toes. Their foot pushes off from the entire front half. You
Hmm.
can see this from the footprints. And I think you could say it would almost be impossible to fake that, even if you put on a prosthesis on your foot, because you still have to push off with your toe. You
Right.
still can't make your foot bend in the middle. So, you know, it doesn't have the proportions. It doesn't, the footprint. I mean, Gimlin's a smart guy. He really is a smart man. Um, but I can't see him inventing a whole new foot anatomy and putting on a monkey suit and wearing breasts to boot. It just that just doesn't strike me as a very cowboyish, rancherish thing to do. Uh, I just I find that just ridiculous.
Well,
And then,
and then like yeah, and Bob Hieronymus, he came out after like 30 something years later saying that he was in the suit, and then we had
hmm
this Philip Morris, I believe.
hmm
I've just started this research myself, so I'm trying to remember the name. Philip Morris, who claimed that he made the suit, and but
hmm
there's no records, there's no invoices of it being, no shipping records,
yeah, yeah.
nothing of it ever having been made or sent. And yeah, it's just kind of, I don't know. It's just fascinating to me. It's really interesting, and something actually that your piece caused me to do. If you want to hear it, I went into a little bit of a deep dive myself because I was curious. You mentioned in your article, and I have heard it mentioned elsewhere, that they'll tell you that, okay, back in 67, even the major studios weren't able to create something quite like this.
hmm
Okay, so that got me thinking, like, okay, well, if we were to say this is a monkey suit, this is a guy in a gorilla suit, what did monkey or gorilla suit, something that Roger Patterson would have had access to at the time, just to be able to order from a costume maker, what would he have had access to at the time? It would have been gorilla or monkey suits. What did
hmm
those look like? What do vintage gorilla and monkey suits look like back in the 60s?
hmm
And I went through tons of pictures, and maybe I just have not found any yet, but I did not find one where it doesn't have the plain gorilla face. As we can see in
just
the PGF, there's hair. There's hair on
yeah.
the face, right? So that led me to believe, okay, this had to have been a custom order. Okay,
hmm
maybe Roger Patterson, he was just like, all right, we're gonna add breasts, we're gonna add a big booty, there are gonna be long arms, and she's gotta have this like beard, Sasquatch beard. So I
hmm
got to custom order that stuff. I
hmm
don't know if Roger Patterson had custom order Bigfoot costume money at that time,
I
from
don't.
what I'm
My
gathering.
understanding is he didn't.
Right.
And it's funny when you said that. The first thing that popped into my head was an old episode of Gilligan's Island. I don't know if you even know Gilligan's Island. It
I'm
was a
aware.
'60s.
I'm not going to know
It
the
was
episode.
it was a '60s sitcom, and there was a
Mhm.
gorilla, on the island with them.
Okay.
And I mean, it's like, come on, there's no way you could mistake this for, something like that for a person.
Yeah.
The closest I think anybody ever came was in the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. And in the beginning, it's Australopithecus africanus,
Mhm.
and Dr. Leakey, who discovered the bone and was sort of an expert, and I believe he was a technical advisor in filming this. But the first, half hour or so of the film is all about these ape men, small, not yet evolved into people, uh, and they did a marvelous job.
Mhm.
Now, you still couldn't really mistake them for anything other than people, but he did a marvelous job of covering that up. And I would say that would be the epitome of what could have been done in that era.
Mhm.
And that would have been in the early '70s, if I recall. I think I was just getting out of high school around that time,
Okay.
the time that movie came out. And it's worth looking at. It's actually interesting. It's, in its own right. But there's no dialogue, just a lot of screeching. Um, but it was beautifully done.
Okay.
But that was with the technical advice of one of the leading anthropologists of the day, who found these bones at Olduvai Gorge and just sort of turned the anthropology world on its ear.
What
That was
what
a good approximation.
what was that movie? I would like to take a look at it.
2001: A Space Odyssey.
Okay. Okay.
And if
Yeah.
you're going to go there, also then go to the end and watch the famous psychedelic sequence too. It still stands the test of time after all these,
Right on. All right. Well, there was what was the other thing? Specifically, I wanted to ask you because you mentioned it in the piece, some story about how Roger and Bob almost lost their lives
Oh my
when they
God.
went back
Yeah.
to get the cast. What can you tell us that story?
Yes, not near as well as they did. So at this conference, they had a film that they were sort of beta testing, and it was an animated film, but it was about how this all happened, how this all came about, from the time they first left. Was it Yakima,
Hmm.
or wherever they were, drove down, and driving, for days, and this old pickup truck pulling horses, trying to go from there to the search. And then, so the night after they had seen it, and they had, I think, cast a few of the footprints. And I may have this little out of sequence, so forgive me, but it starts to rain, and oh no, it's not going to last long. Bob thought, I'm going to go cover those up. They were close enough that he was able to walk back from where they had their truck camp into the woods and cover them up, at least some of them, the footprints. And then it starts to rain, and it rains, and it rains. So in the end, they have to get them and the horses across the river onto the road. The road is the river's starting to flood. They're driving up the road. They can't see through the rain. The whole road is starting to slide off into the river because it's dirt road, it's mud.
Mm-hmm.
And they finally, they're getting to the crest of the hill, and it was downhill from there. They couldn't make it. So Bob runs out and grabs a front end loader that was there from the construction that was going on. And I guess, they left the keys in it or something. He was able to drive it and use that to pull the truck to the top of the hill.
Oh.
And they had pretty much burned out their clutch by that point. But they managed to get into town and mail off the film, that night. But yeah, I mean, it was an absolute. I'm sitting on the edge of my seat, as they're, even as they're going through all of this. It was a great story, and I've never seen any sign of that film after that. I have no idea whatever happened to that, but it was real good.
Oh, wow. I had
So,
not heard that part of the
yeah,
story yet.
yeah, yeah. It's that was the only place I've ever heard this, but it was good. He's a good
Wow.
storyteller.
Yeah. Oh, gosh, I'd love to meet him. Um, so kind of in the vein of PGF, I'm sure you've seen tons and tons of video captures
Hmm.
purportedly of this Sasquatch. Have you, do you know of any that you would say are at least approaching as compelling as the
Hmm.
PGF? Anything even close to it? Catch the second half of my conversation with Jim next week. We pick up with another well-known Bigfoot capture that the field gets a little divided on before we explore some signs and evidence of the creature. For the time being, if you would like to read Jim's online piece, Let's Talk About Bigfoot, I have it linked below. Follow the show on the socials at Paranorm Girl Pod. If you enjoyed this one, take a second to rate 5 stars and leave a nice review. If you didn't enjoy it, you don't have to do a single thing. Don't have to lift a finger. If you are over on YouTube, hit like, subscribe, and share. Remember, I am trying to get the channel to 500. We'll do a big listener giveaway once we hit our goal. One last thing before we go. I got some merch, baby. The merch is coming in. I am stoked. I am still waiting on a few more items, though. But once they are in, I will have an online store where you can visit and pick up some PGP accessories. And then you will be super fashionable and supporting the show all at the same time. That is a wrap for today. See you guys back here next week. Until then, stay safe, keep the nightlight on, and sleep with one eye open.